you for attending this evening. If you would stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag, and then we'll begin the meeting. Flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would you like to do the roll call?
Chair Al Bogue,
Here.
Vice Chair Hunter Chang,
Here.
Commissioner Eugene Ramirez,
Here.
Commissioner Peter Leffler, Commissioner Jeff Buzzell,
Here.
alternate Dr. James Lynn. He is excused.
Thank you. The agenda was posted 72 hours prior to the meeting at locations including the City Hall, the Pearl Public Library, and the Recreation Department. It was also listed on the website. This is a special meeting of the Public Safety Commission, and it's held this evening on the first Monday of the month. Some of you may have heard a comment earlier that there is a move afoot to permanently move the meeting date of the commission to the first Monday of the month. And so we are having a special meeting this evening to introduce some subjects that we will deal with in more detail at our regular monthly meeting, which is 2 weeks from tonight. As the City Council sees fit, if they choose to amend the city ordinance that requires us to meet on the third Monday, we're hoping they'll amend it to meet on the first Monday, and we'll meet on the first Monday on a regular basis. So, the agenda this evening has quite a number of items on it. The first item, of course, is a report of any written commissions received. I'm not aware of any. Has anyone received anything? No. Are there any public comments in general about matters other than the specific items on the agenda? If not, are there any?
Something.
Okay.
I'm just going to shout. I was trying to find the police crime log that used to be on the website, and I can't find it now. I was wondering what happened to it. We found out from the manager's report, weekly report, that there was a crime right down our street. My wife's the head of the neighborhood watch, and we were a bit embarrassed to find out that a crime happened under our noses, and we didn't know about it. So then I started looking, because her excerpt.
Why don't I address the question
like
to the chief, and he may be able to answer the question as to whether or not there's a regular log posted on the website as opposed to in your report.
The short answer is we haven't done it in a while. And for that, I apologize. We spoke with Mr. Kwan's wife, Miriam, last week about several things. And we're looking at the crime map, and the log was placed on there by my prior assistant. She's been gone for several months, and embarrassingly, I apologize, we just forgot to put it back on there. It is sent out every Thursday by the city manager. That's no excuse, but that was one thing we forgot to do in looking at all her duties. I forgot to do. I should have picked up that task. But I have an assistant starting on Thursday, and it will be out there. And in fact, I'll make sure the one that we completed today will be online. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have comments to make at this time? If not, we'll continue. We normally would receive departmental reports at our regular meeting. However, we received those reports at our regular meeting. And unless there are amendments to the regular monthly reports that any one of the department heads would like to present.
From the
If
police
there are,
department, I would,
please.
just a couple of updates. There was a request by the commission about questions about ring, and I have that information.
That's on the agenda as item 6.
Okay, then I'll wait for that, but the most important thing is our 28th officer is graduating from the police academy on Thursday at 6 p.m. at East Los Angeles College. Jesse Ruiz has completed his training with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and he'll be joining us, and we're very ecstatic about his completion of the academy, and this will bring us to 28 officers. This is the first time in 5 years that we've had our full complement of officers.
Great.
I want to thank the community and the council and the commission in our office, in our department for making that happen.
I'm going to take the opportunity to share the comments that, or to make reference to the comment or the subject that came up earlier in the town hall meeting. There were suggestions from members of the council as to priority options for the coming year. And one of the items that was suggested had dovetailed with an area that you had previously discussed with the commission, having to do with reinstating the traffic-focused motorcycle team. And I realize that it's too early to conclude, to know whether or not the council will approve that or not, but I did want the other members of the commission to be aware that that subject is among those priority initiatives that are being considered by the council. And I'm sure we will learn there whether or not they've selected that as one of the objectives or not for the coming year.
Thank you.
Chief Rueda?
Just a couple things, Commissioner. I wanted to share with you this morning at about 1 a.m. the city of San Marino was impacted by winds northeast. We knew they were coming, both Public Works, Police Department, and the Fire Department were well aware, but sometimes we have difficulty guessing what a 13-mile-an-hour wind will do to the city. And in this case, we actually did see some damage. It wasn't until early morning, but both police and fire departments were out early before 5 a.m., conducted surveys, and at that point there was plenty of debris in the streets, palm fronds, but no damage, some power outages. And then after 7 a.m. we did see a couple of our larger trees uprooted. Fortunately, no injuries, and we'll continue to monitor tonight. It's expected to get a little breezy again. We'll have folks out again if we see any indications of damage. The other issue I just wanted to bring your attention to, with the leadership of our mayor, we've been watching the coronavirus and the updates and posting those to the website. But it has been interesting to watch the evolution of this threat, and it really is a threat to our nation, and California being closest. It is something we're watching closely and making sure our residents have accurate information. And lastly, just wanted to hopefully ensure that the orientation for you and Dr. Lynn provided you all the information that you need to help better understand our business model of the fire department. So thank you for your time in participating with us.
And thank you for that. And I was going to mention to the other commissioners, with the reassignment of our subcommittee duties, hopefully each of you will have an opportunity, if you've not already been able to do so, to meet with either Chief Contra or Director Throne, Dr. Lynn and I had an opportunity to meet with Chief Ueda last week and had a very good morning session with he and his team, and are much more knowledgeable about some of the challenges and some of the opportunities than we had been previously. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the last meeting. You've had a chance to read those. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of January 20th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. That brings us to items 2 through 4, as well as items 5 and 6. In lieu of a time limitation or a time availability limitation on the part of one of our commissioners, I would like to, with everyone's concurrence, move to item 6 and address that first, which kind of dovetails into we're ready to start talking about the RING program. Chief, is that agreeable to the others?
Okay.
All right, then we're going to talk about, we have an item here, consideration of the results of the RING program and a side issue consideration for either continuing or expanding or what have you. So if you would share with us what information you now have.
Sure, the short, quick answer is Ring is no longer offering any rebate program at all.
Mm-hmm.
However, we will continue to support the idea. Just in the past 6 months, we have made 26 felony arrests based upon information we've received from Ring or other doorbell camera systems. That's been outstanding, so we really do want to continue supporting that. Of the 26 arrests, 4 arrests were made by a witness who used an iPhone to capture suspicious activity, and then we were able to connect them through a Ring camera device that then substantiated the information on the Ring or from the iPhone. And that was a attempted burglary from earlier in the day. And that was resulted in the arrest of 4 suspects for burglary and also attempt burglary. So it's a successful tool, and we'll continue to support the idea of camera systems. However, Ring said because of a lot of negative publicity, we contacted them directly concerning privacy issues, that they have decided not to continue any kind of rebate program.
Any comments from any of the commissioners? Gentlemen from the public, Mr. Kwan, you indicated you would like to address this issue?
Yeah, I put in a speaker.
Is there a chance you could come up someplace closer and speak into the microphone so that to the extent there's information that we need to capture, we can capture it?
Yeah, just this morning I saw in a news feed that like CNBC was showing the public how to opt out of the police reaching you to say, hey, there's a crime in the neighborhood and we'd like to know if you want to volunteer your camera footage to help solve the crime. And they're telling people how to opt out of that as if it's such a bad thing. And I just find it kind of shocking. So this surprised me that Ring is pulling out because they're basically equating the police department with Big Brother, and it's all horrible. And I just wanted to throw that in. I read that this morning, and of course I heard, like everybody else, about the voices coming out of the machinery and stuff like that.
Thank you. The fact that Ring isn't offering a rebate program, I assume would not prevent the city from continuing to offer a rebate on their own, should they wish to. Am I correct in that should the council feel that the program, that they wanted to offer a discounted price on a Ring or some other device that would be up to them and their funding and.
Well, I'm sure we could definitely look into it and figure out a mechanism to rebate residents within the city that do purchase them. We could do that.
Okay. Any other comments or thoughts or?
The only question I had, Chief, is there any data that shows that any of these 26 arrests came from one of the Ring devices that was distributed or part of the rebate program? Not that it matters, I was just curious.
As with the agreement that we had with Ring, they will not release the names of anybody who purchased the devices. So there's quite a firewall built between us and the people who purchase the devices and have them, and unless they do opt in and are willing to provide us with the data, there is no way that we would be able to find out who has the devices that were purchased in the rebate program at all.
And I would just echo maybe what Commissioner Bowe is thinking and say that I don't think the police department should give up on its efforts to get these devices out into the public, so rebate or not. I know at one point that the department was in the mode of encouraging residents to go out and purchase these devices, and I think we should continue to do that. And on my street in particular, I think between alarm systems and Ring is almost completely blanketed, and it does make residents in the area feel more comfortable that there's something watching. So I would just encourage that we continue to encourage our residents to think about doing this on their own, even without a reason.
We will. Thank you.
Okay. And you've made a note in the minutes that, as to the chief's comments about the success the positive results of information coming from them, and the fact that we have inquired and that the Ring in particular has discontinued their rebate program at this point.
Yes.
Thank you. So that will get shared with the members of the City Council, and the Council may very well wish to consider developing an independent program, either to encourage direct acquisition by residents or maybe to fund some kind of a support program. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for allowing us to jump forward to that. Shall we go back then to items 3 and 4 are included in the agenda largely as informational, and they gave staff the opportunity to share with the commissioners and the public who have found the information on the website 2 reports of studies that have been undertaken. And it is my understanding that the recommendation for items 3 and 4 is that they be studied by the commissioners with the intention of discussing them in more detail or in detail at the commission's regular meeting on the 17th. Am I correct in my understanding, Director?
Yes, you are very much correct, Chair Bowe. These are pretty hefty things to digest over your weekend. And so as we'll be meeting in 2 weeks, it was more than appropriate to give you some time to take a look at it. I know there's some members of the community that are interested in this, and allows you all to do as deep of a dive as you want to. Both of the consultants that have prepared these will be at your meeting on the 17th to go over them, and so that's the most appropriate place, because all of your questions that you've saved up will be able to be answered specifically by the expert that's written these 2 reports. For the traffic circulation one, what you have is an existing conditions report. This is something that they were to prepare for us. Kind of gives us a baseline as to how our network is operating, and basic traffic counts throughout town all over, sort of set the baseline so that future recommendations as to improvements can be made with a model that they have created basically from real life data, which is always the best way to calibrate a model. And now you can then go and do some traffic modeling on top of it and see how things work. There's two other parts to the study that they will be delivering to us. One is a recommendations report as to things that the city can consider in the future to alleviate different circulation issues throughout the city, as well as a traffic calming toolbox. And that's something that I think everyone will be very interested in seeing what sort of tools you have in your toolbox. The next step after that, after the adoption of these other tools, will be actually having a neighborhood traffic calming program as to how do those tools get implemented or enacted throughout the city. So that's the follow-up for that. But the first thing is to see what the universe of tools are, and then there can be a discussion as to where are some of these more suitable in some places and not, and then how do the different neighborhoods go about requesting traffic calming, and then how does that work its way through the budgeting process, and ultimately city council, and then ultimately actually building something for real. If that's in fact one of the things that's actually selected. As the chief mentioned at the town hall, traffic calming is part enforcement, part education, and part engineering. And unfortunately, engineering is the last thing that you want to do. You want to start with education and enforcement first to try to change behavior. If you build something, it may not necessarily change behavior. And that's where you want to get to at the end after you've exhausted the other two. And the chief and I have been having a lot of very good discussions about that, especially with potential priority initiative by the city council of launching a Vision Zero program, which has a lot to do with traffic calming. So those are things to look forward to. There, you did get the entire report on all of the intersections, because I felt that there was maybe at least one community member who would drill into the data here. And so the other item that you have in front of you is the long-awaited, especially by our chief here, the Engineering and Traffic Survey. This is also known as the Radar Speed Survey, and it allows there to be legal speed limits that can be enforced by traffic radar. So we're very much excited about that. The general conclusion that can be taken from this is that there are two street segments that are going to be recommended to be reduced in speed, and that would be San Marino Avenue, and the other one would be Sierra Madre Boulevard, be reduced by 5 miles an hour. So that's a very positive thing there. There are also a handful of streets that we would like for the council to classify as being what's called a residential district street. Those streets are permanently labeled as 25 miles an hour, and no further work has to be done in order to enforce that, as long as that's on the books. So TransTech, who is our city traffic engineers, will be here to answer any questions you might have on this. I did not include the radar speed survey information because it is mindless amounts of tables. Of course, that is available should anyone be interested in that. All you would have to do is, I'll just have to remember to send it out to the right community members. And so as I did mention, if the commission or any other interested community member is reviewing this and has questions or comments or whatnot, now's the time to get them to me. You can email them to me, publicworks@cityofsanmarino.org. I will forward them on to the traffic engineers so that they can be prepared to give you more than intelligent answers when the time comes. So that concludes my brief overview. I did want the commission and the community and any other people who are interested in these kinds of things as much time as possible to digest these pretty technical reports, in which build foundations for us to do other things.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for the director at this point?
Not yet.
We all will allocate a substantial portion of the next 2 weeks for study and preparation. And if I understand correctly, should we have questions as we go, we can forward them to you.
Absolutely.
And from the community's point of view, the material that we have received is attached to the agenda for this meeting. The community should be able to download that to read on their own devices if they wish, rather than having to deal with it on the website, and or to convert to a hard copy if that's what they wish. And we will have at our meeting on the 17th, we will discuss these two items in detail. They will be the principal items on the agenda that evening. We will have our normal monthly reports from the departments, but if we can plan to, as we have been, submit those in writing, and then we'll just hit highlights so that we can devote the majority of the evening to these two reports.
Yes, sir.
And as a matter of communication with the community, anything that the newspaper can do to bring to the attention of members of the community that there will be a public hearing addressing or offering insight into the results of these two studies, we'd certainly very much appreciate that. If there are no other comments by the commissioners, Mr. Kwan, you had indicated an interest in addressing items 3 and 4.
I took a quick skim of it. I didn't know this existed until like 2 hours ago, but looking at it real quick, I agree. It's just tables and tables of numbers. And it's hard for someone in the community to be able to relate to it. I've looked at multiple cities' engineering and traffic surveys, so I kind of know what they look like and all those radar things. But the common public just can't get anything out of that. I assume there's going to be a staff report from the vendor to tell us what it's about. I'm making a couple of requests. One is make a heat map. People can read heat maps. So if you have a heat map of ADT, average daily trips, for the various...
For my benefit, what is a heat map?
Dots.
A heat map, you'll see a concentration in red, yellow, green colors, going from red being the most active down to green or blue, light blue being the least active.
So you're suggesting we take a map of the city and paint colors on intersections? I'm trying to understand.
Virtually, a piece of paper.
It's a simple graphing tool. As you have a line graph, or you have a circle.
Pie graph?
I'm trying to think back to stats. It's just another way of conveying information, and the heat map can show the concentration levels much easier to the reader than sometimes a graph will, or a line might.
So my suggestion is to make those, and the vendor can do that, for the ADT, the average daily trips, basically the volume at these intersections. And the second one is the LOS, for the level of service. Because I know metro maps are filled with colored level of service. Black is bad, green is good. The gradations of colors. So you can correlate where is the traffic really bad, the delays in the intersections, as well as the volume. I know that they make, the police department has made heat maps of where the traffic exits are. I've seen them. And I think it's just really helpful for the public to see this, although it's just a mass of numbers. Another couple of comments is, I was hoping to see some traffic information on Garfield. Garfield is on the border of town. There are San Bernardino residents along Garfield. Now, this is to get somewhere. Part of the Metro project that was approved was that big intersection. And our goal is to try to divert some of the traffic away from Los Robles and onto Garfield. And it'd be very useful to get that data, because from my impressions of looking at maps, there's a lot more traffic on Los Robles than Garfield. And so when the city starts negotiating with the other cities, saying, we want to do this, it'd be very useful to have data to say, look, Garfield's underutilized and Los Robles is overutilized. This is why we're doing that. We're not just trying to be nasty. We're trying to spread the traffic, the burden out to our neighbors. And it just make it seem more a valid point to make to do that. And the same thing I noticed over on the St. Gabriel side. There's no data on St. Gabriel other than at the corner of California. Even Huntington and St. Gabriel is not listed. And we have a school there. And I noticed that there was no data in that intersection. I thought that was something missing. I do want to congratulate this study. I mean, they had, I don't know, 9 data points along Huntington. I think the last one we did only had 3 or 4. So I think that the data is good, and I really am happy that no traffic speed increase is recommended on Huntington. That's the thing I was losing sleep over. Because, it's been a big deal about increasing traffic speed, right? It's going to be horrible. We're jeopardizing the safety. And now we've got a study saying not only do we not have to increase the speed, the police can now police it effectively and keep the speeds legal. So that's all I'd say.
Thank you. Are there any other thoughts or comments that we want to share at this point? I don't know to what extent there is an opportunity to supplement what we have at this point. I realize that neither of these studies were undertaken specifically with regard to those issues raised in the 710 matter, and consequently I understand why they don't necessarily address streets outside of the city. And certainly I'm sure that when we do get to the point that we're going to address the 710 issues, that we will in fact gather timely data at that point. But with regard to any other comments that you've received, if there's anything you or the traffic engineer wants to bring to the meeting, that would be helpful. But certainly to the extent that in their when they come and make their presentation, to the extent that they can use any kind of visual aids, whether it's a heat map or it's a slide on a screen, I'm sure that would be very helpful to not only the commissioners, but to any members of the community or the public that were in attendance. So I know that we have the ability to, there's a screen up here. So we might want to reorient ourselves in 2 weeks so that we can all see the screen. But any comments?
I just had one question to Dr. Kwan's questions. Who sets and polices the speed limits on those border streets?
St. Gabriel is a portion of it is Pasadena, and the majority of it is Los Angeles County. Garfield, we only have a foot or so of Garfield on the east curb, and the majority of it is South Pasadena. And then south of Huntington is, for instance, Granada. Most of it is ours, however, some of it's Alhambra.
If there's nothing else on those 2 items, that brings us to item 2, which has to do with departmental priority initiatives. And in our meeting 2 weeks ago, or seems like it was just yesterday, but a short period of time ago, we had the opportunity to be made aware of some areas of concern with regard to facilities. And at that time we said that we would touch the question of facilities again when we discuss the budget. But I'm wondering if any of you would like to discuss issues that either touch on facilities or anything else in terms of priority initiatives that you might see in your areas of responsibility, whether they are, citywide initiatives that are among the 876 or whatever that the council chooses. I'm sure there's still going to be issues within your departments that are of particular concern and as for personal or departmental goals and objectives. I don't know whether this is the time to raise those or not, but under the subject heading of priority initiatives, I guess we have an opportunity to begin that conversation if it's appropriate.
In sticking with the umbrella priority initiatives, one of those priority initiatives that was brainstormed but didn't actually make the first cut with the city council, but I will try to approach in a different manner, is revamping our CERT program and advancing a disaster supply giveaway program for our elderly residents. We've piloted one disaster preparedness class with the Recreation Department, and I didn't advertise that we were going to be giving away a disaster supply starter kit for our residents. And it was like Black Friday when I informed everybody that they were getting something at the end that would help them really prepare a starter kit, because part of the presentation was about preparing a kit for your home in the event of a disaster. And it was so popular, we asked the council earlier this year for permission to reallocate community development block grant funds that are ordinarily compiled over several years and then used to repair sidewalks and other public works projects. We reallocated that money to disaster supply kits, which we are doing a larger program, a half-day program with the Recreation Department in May, and it'll provide 100 starter kits to residents of San Marino that are 55 and over that complete the course, and it's a nice starter kit for a resident to build on, and ideally get to the point where they have 14 days of supplies. But I have done literally dozens of presentations in this town on various disaster preparedness topics, and I hate to say it, but I haven't given up. But I bet within that dozens of presentations, I've probably had a dozen people actually start kits that I believe. I just am having trouble getting people when it's, when our disasters are few and far between to really prepare for the next one. But this program seems to have generated some energy. People are getting something when they didn't expect something, and at least amongst our elderly residents that are attending the programs at Recreation, they've generated a buzz and plan on attending. So I was prepared to ask the council for additional money to expand the program, but we'll still be able to get the $8,000 that was previously allocated from the community development block grants to do the program next year. We'll just do it smaller unless I can find some other funds. So that really was the one priority initiative that I had advanced, and within the umbrella of this process, and wasn't a capital improvement program or something else, but we're still going to do it. We're just going to figure out what size we're going to do it to. But it has so far proved to be a very popular program.
Is that something you conceive being able to incorporate into your operating plan that might, at least the time availability might be covered by your operating budget, even if the cost of kits wasn't, if we had to go out and fundraise for kits or something?
The time really isn't an issue. I do many of the presentations because people often look for the fire chief as part of the, to invite to speak. That really isn't the issue. And we have also 4 other officers that at the fire station that are all very well versed in disaster preparedness. They quite often speak at the schools. They do presentations for the PTA. They partner with the police department at neighborhood watch programs to do the presentations to really force multiply what I do. But it's really the money, the $10,000.
Let me ask the question in a different way. In the budget for the fire department, and as I recall, we have a budget separately for emergency preparedness in the city.
We do. We have an emergency management budget.
Is it conceivable that in one or the other of those budgets there's room to at least propose some funds for community education that might be used for this purpose?
Some of that could be reallocated. I just have to, like I said, determine what size the program would be without additional funding. But it'll still take place. It just may not be as
it's
big.
It's concerning to think that there's a need. We've identified the need. We've identified a way of meeting the need. And because it, quote, doesn't become one of the 5 citywide priorities, that we can't do it. I'm just wondering if there isn't if it doesn't fit somewhere else, and of course that's just me asking questions.
Yeah, and I would say I would say it's not going to happen. It is going to happen. It's just depends on what size it's going to happen, whether or not we would end up giving away 200 to 300 disaster supply kits next year, or would it be, say, 500 kits to give away?
What does each kit cost to produce?
The ones we have purchased for the upcoming seminar are $100 each, and they're a nice, robust kit. And I think our last demographics that I looked at, I think I want to say 40% of our residents are 55 years and over. So we have, we have an aging population, and I think this is a good project to get people excited about building something. They take it home with them, and they can certainly add to it.
I just purchased quite a few from the Uncharted Supply Company, the 72-hour packs for all my cars, and they're like $500. So if you're getting that for $100, that's a great deal. There's a variety of packs to purchase, all the way up to $5,000 and $10,000. Yeah, I saw the 5,000 ones from one of the residents in the city.
Right.
Picking them up in the Northwest Territory. I saw that one.
But I don't know that everybody needs to really invest that much. It's really what we're teaching is buy a weatherproof plastic trash can and start piece by piece putting water, canned foods, a can opener, a way to heat food if you don't have gas or electricity, and your medicines, some means of light, flashlights, and a few other incidentals. But it's simple. It's just getting kick-started to go.
Okay. Chief Contra, do you have anything you'd like to discuss under this subject?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Obviously, our 2 primary priority initiatives are the Vision Zero, which is dealing with a program started in Sweden, and it deals with the reduction of traffic collisions, pedestrians, vehicles, and bicycles, and a partnership with the community where both sides are responsible equally for ensuring that follow the rules. We set up rules, we set up communications so that we can reduce crime. It's currently used in Los Angeles and other places, San Francisco. And with different levels of success, but we will take a look at it and see how we can achieve it through education, enforcement, and engineering. The other one is to begin and bring back our motorcycle officer program. That motor officer program would include not only traffic enforcement, but the 2 officers would be acting like neighborhood watch officers and working on specific community complaints for traffic problems. And they'll be reporting or attending neighborhood watch meetings, talking about those and working with the community to solve problems with the community as far as traffic issues. And also they will become expert traffic collision investigators. And by having them as the primary traffic collision investigators when they're working, it will free up our officers from doing some of those investigations in the field, but more importantly, the completion of the reports of the investigation away from the scene takes quite a bit of time. Obviously, we want to continue to reduce crime. This year we had an issue with vehicle crime, thefts and burglaries from vehicles, which, reading an article today, there's significant amounts of those kind of crimes throughout Southern California, and so we're not immune to that. The other thing, because of the commercial burglary crime that we had, we're starting a business watch and working with the businesses to try and reduce crime. We will have a personal safety class or 2 in the next fiscal year to provide people with information on how to be safe and secure, whether they're at home or away from home. We're also bringing back our Community Police Academy. We're working with Pasadena PD on trying to schedule some dates for some of those things. And then also we want to have a school safety program where we talk about bicycle safety, primarily not only with the elementary schools, but giving information to the middle schools and the high school about safe ways to ride their bikes.
Couple of questions. One of the proposals that was discussed, for the benefit of the commissioners who were not here, the town hall was held at 6 o'clock this evening. The community was introduced to about 9 proposed significant priority initiatives that might be endorsed by the city council, which would result in, I assume, funding and focus through and staff application and the like. And 2 of those programs are the two that Chief just referred to, the recreation of the traffic division using motorcycles and the second item is the Vision Zero program. Question for you. Should one or both of those ideas or programs not be chosen as among the handful of programs to become focus of effort by the council and others for the year? Is there anything that prevents the police department from going ahead and creating for example, the motorcycle traffic enforcement group? What do you need to do that? You need capital dollars for the equipment.
Yes.
You already have the employees
Yes.
who could be reassigned. So I'm trying to relate in my mind what the city manager said was that we're not going to do all these proposals, and yet there's some proposals that strike me as being involved with the Public Safety Commission that whether the council picks them as the primary flag waving project or not, these are things we've discussed with you in the past about things that we believe ought to be undertaken. And I guess I'm asking the question is, if, let's say, the launching of the motorcycle enforcement and investigation team doesn't become a council priority objective, can it still become a project to be included in your budget proposal, for example? Or would that not be politically correct? I don't mean to put you on the spot, I'm just trying to understand.
You put me on the spot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It would be something that if the council chose not to include as a priority initiative, There'd be conversations with the city manager to see if we could request it through the normal, we'd add it to a capital program for the motorcycles themselves. And we would look at line items for increasing equipment for the motor officers and training budget. They would have to go to motor school. They would also have to go to a couple different, at least 2 to 3 different traffic collision investigation courses. And whatever, as we've said today, that we haven't fully flushed out everything that's needed, but we have an idea. That would be the requirement. We'd have to see if we could put it into the budget.
Well, my impression of sitting in the meeting was that there was a concern over focus and the use of staff. Wasn't so much a question of resources other than that. So maybe it would be possible to go ahead and include that in your budget proposal, at least preliminarily, or will the council? Do you think the council is going to have made a decision as to what priority initiatives they're going to support? Did anybody have any sense? Gee, there's a member of the council sitting in the audience.
Well, not to put the mayor on the spot.
Anybody can comment on, or I know you can't say what, I mean, obviously the council has decided what the initiatives are, but what's the timetable for deciding on the initiatives? Will it be early enough that the public safety departments might incorporate some things in their budget, even if they're not in one of these chosen categories?
Sure, I will speak generally. The 9 that made it that you saw tonight, or I don't know if they're listed in the packet, were the highest vote getters. But there were several on the list, for example, I don't remember, like bike safety that we wanted to include within the concept maybe of Vision Zero or things like that. So some of those could get rolled into these. We tried, I think that was a thought by, that we didn't necessarily, we liked a lot of the priority initiatives, but you know, the vast one, but like has start a farmer's market, for example, that's gonna come from rec department. It will take time and possibly money, et cetera, a lot of work, but staff time to get it set up, but it's not necessarily dead in the water, so to speak, because we didn't bring it forward in these 9. That's gonna be a separate analysis when we hear what rec commission and the Blue Ribbon Committee come back with us. You know, so some of those things will get absorbed in other ways, I think, and the council is supporting more than just these. As to the finances, we also had a discussion at the very outset whether some of these, and I think, you know, the chiefs and Director Throne can add to this, that, you know, I was asking about a direction because some of them to me do seem to be more like monetary, you know, questions, as opposed to should it really rise to the level of an elevated priority initiative that we say 0, you know, because there's a lot there that are pretty small and pretty finite. I'm not saying they're easy to do and it's more work, so they have to find staff to achieve them. But I'm hoping that some of those things will come out, or even, for example, you know, the support for the protection and safety, but the earthquake kit. So I'm not saying the money, I don't think we're necessarily not going to support those things financially, but that's also going to have to come through budget recommendations. And
so what you're saying is that there are a series of things that we want to put on the front burner and everybody support, but each department still is responsible for developing its own budget with its own plan, with its own operating plan, which includes initiatives to make things better, or
right, that they've seen that they want to either continue, for example, that maybe it's an ongoing project, and we agreed recently that some money that was found would be excellent to start doing for those emergency kits, right, for seniors in the community. So that can take on a life of its own because it's not a big, however, like motorcycles, the message that I got was that that's a pretty significant amount of money, because it's both a capital purchase, which you could do through the motorcycles, but it also means the training, you know, it's a bigger deal. So we really do need to make sure that the community and the majority of council is behind something big like that, because that's a much bigger commitment of resources than some of the smaller things like bike safety, let's say at the schools, even though that's going to take time, or, you know, purchasing more kits this year. Should we go through them and there's a need, we might be able to fund that by a matter of a request that comes along during the year. So you know, it's hard, and so I know that doesn't give you an answer, but I don't have the answer either. I don't know what
Well, but
can be pushed somewhere else, you
If
know.
I understand, it sounds as though what you're trying to do
It's
in
most of
terms
those things on the
building-
paper.
in terms of building your business plan for the next coming year, you're trying to identify areas in which you want to add something to the existing
Right, responsibilities,
operating
let's say,
plans,
right.
and you're trying to give the departments guidance, and they'll get the guidance in time to build their own budgets.
Right, right. And particularly if it takes a significant investment of staff time. You know, it doesn't exist now, how is that all gonna, you know, because that's really
Right.
burdensome. So we don't want to, you know, even for example, the Chinese language translating, you know, that's gonna take a lot of thought as to how we handle that and who does it. And we could hire somebody outside, but then that's money. So, I hope that helps.
I don't know if it helps the chief or not. I guess it helps us. So if we believe strongly, as we have seemed to express ourselves in a number of meetings during the last year, that the reinstitution of the motorized, the motorcycle traffic monitoring team was a good idea, then it might be that we need to lobby our council people.
Right, and I don't know, I did ask, just to close this, close the loop on this, that I did ask, two things. You asked when we'll get the count, we'll get some input from what happened tonight. There was voting by some, and people can now go online as well to the city website to vote on these priority initiatives to give us an idea. That all that information will come back to us at the end of the month. So we're gonna have another discussion about, you know, whether we go with 6 of those 9 or 5 of those 9s, and to kind of get an idea of what the community wants as well as our own thoughts. And so that'll happen. So your input after your 17th meeting, or whenever you want to discuss this and say these are the however many you're interested in supporting, that will be helpful as well. As long as we have it before the end of the month, that's fine, because it'll be the last Friday of the month, is my understanding of when we take this up again.
So as a practical matter, my guess is those ballots, or some of those are still on the back table.
No, they took them.
Oh, they did.
So you could go online, and there's one vote per IP address.
Okay, all right, so if the
keep
commissioners
in
would
mind.
make a point to go onto the city website.
Yeah, and please tell people as well, we need to get the word out. It would be helpful
Very
to see what people are interested in.
Okay. Director Throne, do you have anything that you want to discuss at the risk of good or bad things happening?
Well, you know, like I tell my staff, Public Works only does good. So kind of going back to the original theme of facilities conditions.
Yes, that was.
We did in the staff's original brainstorming for priority initiatives, and this is included in your packet just before the big thick knot of paper about existing traffic conditions. There were 2 items there. One did make it into the top 9, one did not. But they were both facilities oriented. One was to look at improving the audio visual systems, not only for this room, but for city council chambers. That did not make it as a priority. However, it can be programmed into the capital improvement program, which is a parallel route of activity with a separate set of funding. And so that can be...
It is a capital issue.
And it is a capital issue. And so when you look at the definition of what is a priority initiative, is it a big picture thing? Is it something that's more than just the task of buying some fancy electronic equipment or buying a piece of hardware? Is it something that involves a lot more community discussion? Is there policy issues that have to be resolved beforehand? And so that would kind of lead you more into a priority initiative. The one on the list that was generated by your executive staff was renovating the San Marino Center into a state-of-the-art community center and senior center. Now, that rose up into that, even though that is in fact facilities oriented, it really is a very big picture policy question. And it drives down to what sort of programming do you want to have in that building? And that really designs what kind of renovation you're going to do. You just don't renovate a building and then figure out what you're going to use it for. You kind of sort of want to know going into it so that you can make good choices. Because once you build it, it's hard to unbuild it or build it different. Again, you're spending money more than once on something that you could have taken a little bit more time and having a lot of meetings. Meetings don't cost you nearly as much as having to tear out this wall you just built. So as it relates to facilities, having a good condition assessment of the San Marino Center is a good thing, and that's like a technical task, just like we just did with the police and fire buildings. That can be something that, independent of what the community looks at, what the building ought to be using for, you can still do an assessment and figure out, okay, what kind of shape is it in really? So that's where you sort of have the two levels there. You have a priority initiative, which really starts at the recreation, the community engagement level, while over in the corner you've got your little public works guys doing a condition assessment. Then there's also things that just come up and you wake up one day and you go, wow, we have an infrastructure issue here that is a little more important than it makes itself important in a situational condition. This morning we woke up and came to work and found that yes, our City Hall generator was operating generally okay. Not 100% for police operations, 100% for City Hall and 100% for the fire service, 0% for Public Works because we're not connected to the generator. And so it does make trying to find your files a little more difficult when it's dark and cold and your computer doesn't work. And so while that is not a priority initiative, that is a condition of your infrastructure. And so the chiefs and I were talking about this morning is that we're in the capital improvement proposing mode. And this is just another good thing, at least to put onto our list. It may be something that is approved to move forward and investigated for next year, or maybe at some point in the future when other conditions change. But at least we will be able to have that discussion. So as it relates to facilities, those are the things that the priority initiative discussion and thinking about what you're doing, on getting here at 6:30 and finding out, the generator is operating. Those are the things that kind of fit into the overall discussion of priority initiatives and whether or not you can turn some of these things into operational. There was one talking about launching the neighborhood traffic calming program, and really that's an operational thing. It's just the next sequence of our citywide circulation study, and then what the toolbox comes into play, and then motoring that into a calming program. But is it a priority where you're devoting lots of resources, you need extra monies? It's something that can be brought up in an operational discussion of, to launch this program we'll need this amount of small dollar resources, and therefore that's a request to add to our operational budget, or we can find some savings over here because we're really not doing that program anymore, and instead we'd like to substitute that. That's sort of how this process, when it comes down to those 9, those are really the big picture things. Should the council really be focusing their energies, wanting to make sure that these things are championed and completed within that one-year time frame.
Okay. Any comments from anybody, any of the commissioners? We know we're going to be looking at capital project budget proposals shortly. And it would seem reasonable in light of the problem you discovered this morning that we might not be surprised to see some request for some improved backup generator system or something. Is that fair?
The generator
At least
works
somebody
really
will
well.
Get a look at it.
Yeah, it's really wiring the darn thing into the courtyard.
Okay.
The fuel pumps are hooked to the generator, and that's probably as important as having the apparatus doors hooked into the generator in the 911 dispatch center. Everything else is sort of, you can work it through your cellular device, or if you have mobile ways of doing computing. But it's really the physicality of being able to dispense fuel or route calls or opening the doors so that the firefighter paramedics can get out and do calls for service. Those are things that when you're presented with an opportunity to at least put it onto a public list, it's not forgotten. And that's a lot of how I view the capital program, is that there's stuff that you would like to do now, there's stuff that you plan to do, and there's stuff that in the future would be nice to do, and we're thinking about it now. And it's our opportunity to send a note to us in the future that, at this time we were thinking about this, and here's why. If this situation still is present in the future, well, then maybe that's the right time for those folks to work on it. But at least it's not lost. I mean, many times you'll have a good idea, and then you'll forget about it because you didn't write it down.
Well, you presented us at the last meeting with the results of the facility review, and that identified some things that needed to be done now, or ought to be done now. And I'm sure that some of those things will be on the capital investment budget request.
Yes.
Going forward, and probably other things as well. So.
Yes, as one of the charges that the council has is looking for me to accomplish is basically a systematic evaluation of all of our facilities. There is an item on your agenda. I had hoped to be able to show you this really cool, fancy software, but I just got trained on it toward the end of last week, and I'm not quite prepared to show you the extent of my poor training on it. But it is something that allows us to manage our resources much more effectively, and it allows us to, if we are so inclined, do our own condition assessments and keep documentation of it, or continue to use the very effective consultant that we had, who's told me many times they're more than happy to come back to San Marino and do a bunch more buildings for us. They were very inexpensive, very efficient, and it did not hurt the pocketbook at all, which was actually very pleasant and exciting. And they were thorough enough for our purposes of being able to establish sort of a temperature as to the buildings, and we did choose buildings that are in better shape than some of the other buildings we have, and so that's where I'm looking to be following that with more of the same this coming fiscal year, and that will be in my budget recommendations for the capital program.
So it takes care of number 5. That's number 5.
Well, I think we've actually gone through, I think we've covered everything on the agenda, if not in the right order, at least we've covered the things. I'm going to recommend, if you don't mind, that you all, if you haven't already seen that list of issues that the council is looking for, essentially, I guess it's new programs, big things to do, in addition to keep doing what we're already doing, sort of things. So if you would take a look at that and share your opinions with council, I know they would appreciate that. Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss this evening?
Mr. Kwan?
Yes, yes, sir.
Because of the topic of windstorms and power outages, I read that the high school had no power. I wanted to remind the Public Safety Commission of a a public hazard in health in that the cell towers have diesel backup generators. Those will turn on when there's a power outage. However, they do not shut off automatically when the power is restored. The human has to be assigned to come out and shut them off physically. So we became aware of this problem because the one in the middle school, its diesel generator is literally 3 or 4 feet from the air conditioner intake of the adjacent class bungalow, which my son used to be in. So imagine it's at summertime, or it's hot, the air conditioners are running, the power goes out. The power comes back on, the air conditioners turn back on, but the diesel doesn't. And those fumes are going straight into the classroom. My wife and I complained about this in front of the South Coast Air Quality Management Board, and they were appalled. They said that should not happen. And what they did was they forced the carrier to, unfortunately, they had to shut it down. They had to disable the diesel generator. We need it in times of emergency, but because of public safety, they had to shut it off. It was frankly the cheapest thing they could do. Rather than move it, they just said, we'll just shut it off. And because that thing's supposed to be moving out of there sometime in a year now anyway. So I did want to point out that since it happened at the high school, it's quite possible that generator wouldn't shut off. We looked at public records that there was one time where it took 2 days to turn it off. So it is a public hazard. Even though you think generators are good, they can, in certain circumstances, be bad things. That's all.
Thank you. Is that something that any of the 3 of you have any information about, or does monitoring the generators that are sitting on our school campuses have fall into our area, or does that fall into the schools?
We could go put a water hose into the air intake, and that would shut it off. But it actually is under the umbrella of our planning and building department that's been following the issue, and I wrote a note, and I'm going to
Thank you.
pass that on to
Thank you very
Aldo
much.
Cervantes
And
tomorrow.
thank you. All right, if there is nothing else to come before the commission this evening, it's obvious we have a lot of reading to do before we meet again. And we'll have an opportunity to raise questions and the like. And we will have, we'll set the room up so we can see a visual presentation by the consultants.
Yes, we will be at City Hall, so it's the standard thing that we have.
Yeah,
You're used
that's
to it.
right.
You're used to
Kind
that.
of, we can
Yeah.
kind of look up there and see that.
And then if you adjourn to your March 2nd meeting, which I'm relying on, so I'll let you know.
So
Because I'm going to flood you with even more thick reports,
Good.
except Jennifer won't let me, or I'll have to pay for the printing myself. That one will also have to be at City Hall because there is a meeting room conflict. No, that one will be here because City Hall has because of the
No.
election.
No.
City Hall,
Is
it
it
will
the
be
other
at
way
City
around?
Hall.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
this is what
this
they're
is the
taking over,
this is the
This is
election.
what's taken over? All right.
because they have new equipment.
So March 2nd, we'll be back at City Hall.
Yes.
Yes.
And then probably if they have one of their town hall meetings, it will probably be at City Hall as well.
It'll be just before this meeting. Hopefully, after this one, there'll be enough buzz that you'll have more people.
So,
And just to remind the commission, the 17th is a city holiday, so the city is officially closed, but we will have our meeting.
okay. So we shouldn't arrive too early because the door will be locked?
I'll be here early. I'll try to be here by 6.
By at least 10
6:45, yes.
Okay,
Good.
so we should be able to get in by 6:50, and we'll have the meeting, we'll have the consultants there, have a visual presentation. The press will make sure that the public realizes that that meeting on the 17th is in the City Hall, should they wish to come. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Thanks you to everyone for your attendance and for your input
Thank you.
and for the reading material.
Yes, thank you. My eyes, thank you.